Sure, let me pull that up then.
Excellent, thank you. I'll go ahead and do attendance. Commissioner Montgomery?
Here.
Commissioner McCullough?
Present.
Commissioner Smith?
I'm here virtually.
Great. Commissioner Dean is expected maybe in a few minutes. Commissioner Miller is absent. Commissioner Evans is participating virtually from San Francisco. Commissioner Ortiz?
Here.
And Commissioner Incesario may show up later. So we'll go ahead and get started, but we'll bump approval of the meeting minutes to the end of the meeting. Did everyone receive them by email?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any qualms or questions that need to be addressed? Great.
Oh, Gary's here.
Hey, Gary.
Hi, Gary.
Here, good timing here.
Excellent. All you missed was attendance, but we'll correct the record. Okay. So we'll start with the investigations update. I know y'all got an email for the scheduler, and many of you have gone ahead and scheduled your two-person debriefs, which we're grateful for to keep that moving. Mummy, is there anything we want to address besides the extension?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I didn't schedule mine because I didn't know if it had to be in person. Is it in person? Because that makes a difference as to availability.
We have done them virtually.
Okay.
Maybe that for some cases or something that we may want to, but for right now, we just need to get the information flowing. So we've been doing them by phone.
Yeah, once you sign up using the bookings tool, it'll automatically add a Microsoft Teams meeting.
Okay.
To that. Okay. With the exception of yours, Dave, which it has not sent the Teams invite. Cool.
Excellent clarifying question. So we have a 60-day time period to process the investigation and complaints, or the process is that we have to approve an extension as the COB for going beyond that. And since we didn't have the infrastructure in place to do the interviews as we started receiving complaints, we're thinking it makes sense to issue a blanket extension approval for any complaints that were received before the infrastructure was operational, so that we can collect the information needed to properly address the investigations. So that would be, I think, all of the investigations that were received before yesterday. And that way it's just a batch and it doesn't, create, we have the process in place, we're operationalizing them, and the interviews have started, but so that we don't have to sort of issue individual ones for all of the ones that came in case they go over, since we've got a queue. I wanted to check in with y'all about that and also let you know about the process where I'll approve a request for extension in writing for anything that seems administratively delayed, but for anything substantive or maybe out of the ordinary, I'll be sure to coordinate with you all. Are there questions or input about that? And Mummy, if I missed anything.
Yeah, if I could just clarify a couple of things that hopefully might help to address any maybe pending questions. So if you look to the ordinance 69.9, section C, paragraph 1, it addresses a 60-day timeline that references myself and OPR or ACPD generally. And then if you look at the same section, section C, but paragraph 9, you will see where it discusses a 60-day timeline that references you all. So I just wanted to make sure that folks know that there are two 60-day timelines that are referenced in the ordinance. The first one in paragraph 1 is detailing what should happen if a collaborative investigation between myself and OPR goes over the 60-day timeline, in which case me, Chief Penn, and Captain Kim, as the commander of OPR, would submit a written request to the COB vis-a-vis Julie, who's the chair, and basically state, there's this investigation that is going to go over the 60-day timeline. For X reason, we're requesting an X day extension. The ordinance says that you all shall approve those extension requests. So it's more of an administrative kind of matter of just like making sure that there's a written record and there's an articulation as to why, and then we have a timeline articulated for what the extension is. But I think, as Julie said, it's still important that if there is some sort of, off the wall circumstance or something like that, that you all would still be apprised of like what that circumstance was or anything like that. But separately, when Julie was talking about a kind of like blanket exception, so just to backtrack a little bit, in order to get the investigations operationalized, and by operationalized, I mean getting the interviews with the officers underway, we had to secure video equipment. ACPD spearheaded an effort to secure video camera, and they've installed it now in their interview room, which then allows me, when I'm monitoring the interview, to not just be able to hear it, but to be able to see it via live feed. So I can see it in real time and then ask my questions through Captain Kim. So prior to then it was audio, now it's audio and video. So while we were procuring the equipment and also, the funding and whatnot, all the things that ACPD had to go through to make it happen, we paused the interviews. We were still receiving the complaints, coming up with the investigative plans, discussing them, getting them prepped, starting the debriefs, as you all know, but we didn't actually formally start doing interviews until actually yesterday. So that's kind of like a background update that I wanted to make sure you all are aware of, which is that we're now fully operationalized and doing interviews and everything of that nature. And these only impacted officer interviews. So those are the ones that I would need to be monitoring in real time, or would like to have access to be able to monitor in real time. But we did, some of the preparation for some of these investigations might have also included reaching out to community members and things of that nature. So we were able to handle that part, but the officer interviews was what was kind of on hold. So that is what gets us to the question of the 60-day timeline and whether any of those investigations are approaching or have exceeded the 60-day timeline. The caveat is that the ordinance doesn't explicitly say when the timeline starts. So that issue we're still trying to get guidance on. And so as we're working through that, we wanted to still let you all know kind of what we're anticipating the process to look like and how we would go about making those requests. But if we, after determining when the timeline officially starts, is it when a complaint is submitted? Is it when we start the interviews? When we figure out what that timeline is, then you'll see in the Excel spreadsheet what timeline each investigation is on. And when those investigations are approaching that 60-day deadline, that's when we would submit the request for an extension of time. If we notice that there are a number of complaints that were impacted or maybe approaching the 60-day timeline because of the video equipment, like operational issue, what we're planning to do is just submit a written request to Julie and saying, the following complaints were impacted by the operationalizing of the video equipment, list those complaints out, and that's kind of what Julie would be referencing in terms of a blanket extension for all of the complaints that we received or began prior to initializing yesterday. From yesterday forward, with the caveat of once we figure out when exactly the timeline starts, is when we would, those cases would not be implicated by what we're talking about here with the video equipment. I know that sounds very complicated, but to summarize, we're still trying to figure out when the timeline starts, and if there are any investigations that are either approaching or have gone over the timeline, then we will submit a written request detailing the reasons why it would be because of the video operationalizing setup. Does all of that make sense?
Very comprehensive.
Okay.
Thank you, Mummy. Any questions, y'all? Any concerns about the blanket extension? Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you again for making time and scheduling those debriefs. Gary and I have done some of the original sort of debriefs for the early ones that came in, and there will certainly be sort of common issues or issues that require additional conversation. So as we get into those, I'll be in those with y'all, and we can talk about those amongst ourselves. But also, we currently have our intern looking into some of the background issues on issues that were raised in complaints. So we've got additional support in that regard as well. All right, welcome Martine. Thank you for joining us. Sorry to rush to start. We did push the approval of meeting minutes down since we didn't have a physical quorum. David and I are attending remotely from work conflicts, but did anyone not receive the meeting minutes, or does anyone have questions? Or would somebody like to make a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes.
Carl, second.
Excellent. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Wonderful. We can approve the meeting minutes from June. All right. The next update on the agenda is the training curriculum. The race training, I believe, is accessible through the portal, so it probably makes sense to keep moving that along. We had a request about the ride-alongs for a shorter period, and I believe that the answer we got back is that we're going to keep coordinating with Tosh for the scheduling requests, and there will be a new form so that there's an option for a home pickup possibly. And the shorter shift request it could introduce the potential for disrupting their sort of activities. So the resolution we're gonna move forward with is just that if it's a slow shift and it doesn't interfere with the activities or whatever, to drop a COB member off early, then the officers may be able to accommodate that request. But in general, we're going to stick with the requirement to plan to stay with them for 4 hours so that we don't introduce any variables that might compromise what's going on. Mummy, was there anything else about that we wanted to say or clarify, or Deputy Chief Chamberlain or Kim? Captain Kim?
If Deputy Chief Chamberlain is on the line, she's been the point of contact that I've had with this, so more than happy to let her say it in her own words. But we actually won't be utilizing the same process, and I just wanted to make sure that was clear. So before you would email Deputy Chief Chamberlain to make your request, now there's going to be a Google form where you can schedule your own time. Select the times that you want, and if you want to do like 2 back-to-back shifts, you can do up to 2 shifts back-to-back. And then, as Julie said, you can schedule a request for you to be picked up, which they'll schedule you with someone who works in that district where you live or where you want to be picked up if you specifically want to have the experience of doing a ride along in a particular area. And it doesn't have to necessarily be the area that you live to, right? If you want to do it in a different area, they can schedule you with a particular officer. So you'll have an opportunity to say, like, I want to do let's say a midnight ride along in X area. We just ask that when you make those type of specialized requests, be it a pickup or to do a ride along in a particular area, that you make sure that you are able to honor those requests, because they're going to require some additional kind of scheduling and administrative things, and we don't want to have to then undo those things and cause any sort of administrative burdens or operational issues. So just make sure that you're able to fulfill all of the requests that you make. But the main takeaway is we're going to be using a Google form now instead of emailing Deputy Chief Chamberlain, and she's going to email that information out to the whole COB, so you'll have that form. You will still be required to do your 3 ride-alongs too, which was the other thing that I wanted to make sure that folks were aware of. But it can be any shift that you want. It doesn't have to be morning, evening, or midnight. It can be 3 mornings if you want, or 3 evenings if you want. So a little bit more flexibility there as well.
Captain Kim, do you want to chime in?
This is Latasha.
Oh, sorry.
I changed my look for the day. No big deal.
Welcome, thank you.
So I will send that out at the end of the meeting tonight.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your help with that. That is very convenient, and we really appreciate all of the effort that went into coordinating that last year and the sort of ongoing effort to make it convenient for us. Those are very valuable, and I really enjoyed them, so I'm looking forward to getting back on the schedule.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions from the rest of the group?
Yes, what is the due date for the 3 ride-alongs? I started on a different schedule, so.
End of the year.
End of the year.
Yeah, the end of the year. The ordinance requirement is 3 per year.
So the openings
So-
that we set up for right now will take you through July, August, and September. In September, we will put out dates for October, November, and December.
Hey, Julie, are you gonna pitch back to the race training, or are you done with that?
I'm done with that. I don't really have much more detail on that, but we also at some point need to schedule a training subcommittee meeting, probably in the next month, but I don't want to put that in front of our annual review because we've got reporting requirements with a deadline that are going to come up pretty quickly. So I think we'll make a more specific agenda item to go into expanding and being intentional about the training curriculum. I think there are a couple of policy issues that have come up for me that we have the intern supporting information gathering on. So I think there will be related sort of training inputs that we may want to see if there are existing resources or look into developing things like that. So I may not have the answer to your specific question, but
No, that's okay. No, it's just the same question as Charles asked. I just want to confirm end of the year, December 31st. Got the deadline
For the race
race
training.
training?
I would say as soon as possible, because it's kind of, those are rolling
Yeah, I know,
things,
but
yeah.
got the deadline. So
And for us, I would assume.
as soon as possible before the end of the year.
For what? The
The
training?
race
Race-
training.
The race
Race
training,
training.
the learning
Just wanted to
center.
make sure I knew.
Which is the one, the county one where they added the additional module? Was that what you're
Yes.
talking about?
Yeah,
I think that's.
Is that the training that-
it might be, so I'll talk to you separately if you have issues accessing the learnings.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Great. Anything else on training?
Meeting in August, right?
Um,
Isn't that our break month? Isn't it
Well, I
normally
don't-
the break month for
Have we
committees?
decided on the break month yet?
Well, I know
We have
it's
not
like-
decided on a break month. We have outstanding flexibility in the schedule for both an all virtual meeting or skipping a month. I probably would be more inclined at this point to do an all virtual meeting than a bi-month, just because as our report is due in September, I think there may be other things that we really need to discuss in August and just stay in sync on. But I do know that the summer is busy with travel, so if folks need to use their absences, I think that might be a better way to accommodate it, but we can definitely talk about that if other folks feel like the August meeting will be scheduled for the 9th, second Wednesday of the month. So we could, if we wanted to go ahead and make that one all virtual, I'd be happy to go in that direction.
How many can we
Yeah.
do all virtual? 1 or 2?
We can do 2, they just can't be back to back.
Okay, so this is not like the other committees where like all the committees just take the month of August off. So this is different from the other.
I'm not really aware of that part of their schedule. Our scheduling requirements are that we have to have a minimum number of meetings. I think it's 11, and no more than 2 can be virtual. So previously, I think we had just, when we first talked about the schedule and pulled up all the dates, the consensus I remember was that everyone was thinking it might be nice to have December, not have to meet in December, since there's just lots of different personal plans that sort of aggregate there, and that it would be after we've submitted our annual report and have sort of a plan for 2024. So that was my recollection of the discussion, but I'm happy to reopen it and talk about what folks want from a planning perspective. We certainly want to give everyone the flexibility to keep up with their regular lives. a demanding course, you know.
Hey, Julie, Gary, what I recommend is we kind of do a quick calendar thing, kind of maybe at the open discussion at the end, just. But that's important. I think we need to do this almost every meeting because there's a lot of moving parts. That's just a suggestion, but if we want to knock it out now, we can review the whole year, the rest of the year. It's up to you.
Okay, my guess is that for August, we will want to preview some of our preliminary reporting elements planned for our annual report and make sure that everyone feels like they have their understanding of what we're going to represent in our report out based on both what we've accomplished this year, what we're initiating this year, and what investigation findings or questions we're opening up. So that timeline seems important to me. It's not important to me that it's not particularly important to me that happened in person. So are there other folks who would be interested in an all virtual meeting in August? We're getting, you know, as we get into the second half of the year, the likelihood that we're going to have, you know, more scheduling conflicts gets lower, but it's nice to have the flexibility. So are there other scheduling inputs for questions or concerns?
Yeah, I raised my hand on the all virtual. That's Gary for August.
Okay. Martine, you would also
good
like
with either.
for the all virtual? Okay, Dave?
I'm good with either. I mean, I'll be around, so.
Okay. Okay. Why don't we plan for it to be a hybrid meeting so that folks can attend virtually if they need to? And we will, in the 2 weeks before that meeting, advise if the only reason to make it all virtual would be if we are going to need to vote on something. And if we have an all virtual meeting, then we don't need a physical quorum. We just need a quorum. Is that consistent with your understanding, Mummy? That's my recollection. I think when we do an all virtual meeting, it's acceptable for us to vote on something without
You still need a quorum. Same rules apply virtually.
Okay, so we just need our 5 voting
You need
members.
5
for-
voting.
Perfect. Okay. So the next meeting schedules would be August 9th, September 13th, and October 11th. It's the second Wednesday of every month. So it might be worth looking at those, and we'll make sure we've got the team's invites sent out ahead of time, and I'll coordinate with y'all in the 1 to 2 weeks before to make sure we've got the quorum that we need if we have any planned or needed absences. But I don't think anyone's that has an attendance is bumping up against the attendance requirements right now. So I think we're still in pretty good shape. Other questions or inputs? Anika, does that address your question, or is there an underlying concern that we need to discuss further?
No.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for bringing that up. I know that we've had some ambiguity, I guess, around our continued scheduling. So we have reviewed it, I think, twice in previous meetings, but wanted to keep both our all virtual options and our bi-month a little bit flexible since we didn't have any known conflicts, but folks' travel plans were still in flux. So feel free to reach out to me if there's other issues that we need to address individually about the meeting schedule or attendance. And then we'll go ahead and move on to outreach. So our main area of consensus is that the civic associations are a good place for us to initialize with initial outreach, specifically targeting sort of South Arlington, where historically the county has not always been able to prioritize or effectively connect with folks. So I sent an email to 5 of the civic associations: Green Valley, Douglas Park, Columbia Heights, Columbia Forest, and Arlington Mill, which are all sort of grouped around the southern part of Columbia Pike corridor as the first batch. So the intention will be that we will initiate outreach to all of them, but target meeting with preferably one of those 5 when they're available at their next meeting at the beginning of August. And that what we can do with that first outreach engagement for the civic associations is have a program that where we've got sort of a standard for an overview of our, organizational role, recent activities, ongoing initiatives, and then hold some listening sessions. And that can become a thin enough protocol that we can, initially, I think there was some discussion about wanting to have as many members as possible in attendance, just to show, who we are and that we're very supportive of outreach. I think to make it very more sustainable, that we can keep reaching out to different groups and make ourselves present on a recurring basis, we may want to parallel what we've done for the investigations, which is meeting groups of 2, so that we could do more of them on their schedule. We had talked about it being important to align with existing community activities, just because we don't want to make ourselves a time burden on others. But it's still our plan to do some additional outreach to other types of organizations. Some COB members had identified groups they were going to reach out to and coordinate with individually. So please send me updates on any interest that we get from some of those community, religious, or other organizations that we wanted to coordinate with, and we can, extend that kind of similar programming approach and then adapt as needed. We'll also start figuring out what our plan would be for maybe having a booth at the county fair, since we know that's a very heavily attended, sort of all-encompassing community event. But those are the 2 sort of near-term opportunities for outreach. I think that right now, reaching out to 5 civic associations at a time gives us the opportunity to get on their schedule, but without, creating too much of a conflict for us. So as we get interest and approval from them, I'll share that scheduling information with y'all, and we can figure out who's available, who's interested, and then circulate some talking points so that we can have consistent messaging and also a mechanism for bringing what may come out of the listening sessions back to the larger group. Are there questions or input on that?
Julie, do you know off the top of your head what the dates might be? I mean, I haven't checked. I'm sure they're on a website, but do you happen to know what the proposed or
So it's not posted on the Green Valley Civic Association's website yet for August, which I think might have just been that they posted stuff up to the 4th of July holiday, which I think they skipped. And then it's the first Monday of every month. So that would be August 7th if we were to attend their regular meeting. If they don't want us to attend their regular meeting, what we might look to do is schedule ourselves for either like the 5th or the 12th of August for a late Saturday morning at Drew Elementary, where they normally meet, and just create some advanced visibility and make sure that folks know that we're there and can come listen to us or speak with us in whatever capacity the community is interested. And over time, I think we probably want to do both, but in the interest of kind of accelerating and increasing our connection with the community, wanting to just get in their recurring schedule so that folks, I think once we start meeting with folks, then the word sort of spreads a little bit more organically that we're available and this is how you contact us and here's what, that looks like.
Hey, Julie, this is Gary. I have a similar question. It's kind of tied to David's. It's probably talking to you too, Ian. And I apologize because I wasn't at the outreach meeting, in case I'm going late. But would it be useful for us to have kind of an outreach? I mean, maybe we have a portal there on our website, outreach, but something, a calendar, like I was thinking, county fair, these different associates. So everything that Julie said in her head there, I've got precincts here, South County. There's a couple other things, like somebody individually might be going someplace and I might look at it and go, hey, that interests me. But right now, I think it's all in everybody's heads. If we can start to put it someplace we can all access, I think that we might see something that clicks, or all of a sudden we're available and we can go. So that's just a suggestion. I'm not trying to give Ian work money, I'm sorry. But I don't know. I just think it would be really good if we could all see and we can start populating these things. Because But you gave a great first framework there. I think everybody here is in agreement with that. But David, I think this kind of answers your question too.
Gary, I think that's an excellent point, and I think it would make sense for us to put it in our meetings and minutes, put the outreach in the same place, just so that folks' burden of like keeping track of where we are available to be, accessible, like because these are public meetings, folks can join here online or in person and come and talk to us. So, keeping that all in one sort of line of, so as we get scheduled opportunities confirmed, we can put those on the website in the same place so that they see where we'll be, and especially as there are our own events, not just civic association. Like I don't know how much we want to expand attendance at a civic association for folks who aren't maybe normally part of that group, but we will have opportunities to make sure that we also publicize and not just list, right? So that it's proactive and folks can see it. So I think, for example, if we plan to do some programming at the county fair or other sort of standalone events, we can see if we can't maybe push out like an Arlington text alert so that everyone sort of gets a ping that says, if you're interested in going talking to the COB, they'll be here at this otherwise scheduled event. And related ideas like that, anything about where we can share this information and how we can push it out. Maybe we want to make we could probably work on a standard format for like sharing on social media or Nextdoor or Facebook, so that the local community can kind of start to see, oh, there's these events that I can go to. So Gary, I'll give that a little bit more thought, and any ideas from the group are welcome in that regard. Okay, wonderful. If there are no other items, we can get to the budget. Okay. So last year, and we talked a little bit about this at the beginning of last week's meeting when we were talking about travel approvals. Our budget last year was not, our spending last year was not really representative of a full year. So our budget period closed at the end of June, is my understanding. And so we've submitted an estimated allocation for our budget, which is $100,000 for 2024, with provision for legal outreach, training, and other administrative or overhead expenses. Those projections are kind of just what we can start from, and recognizing that we're building a little bit from scratch here, we thought that the best approach might be to do quarterly updates on spending so that, you all have a chance to review the numbers at regular intervals, and we can make sure that our outlays are, aligned closely with our priorities and the group's interest in, balancing training versus outreach, any need we end up having for legal support, and making sure there's visibility and input about that. Any other, is that a helpful approach? Is quarterly often enough to get budget updates?
Yeah, I think quarterly makes good sense. I don't think it needs to be more frequent than that.
Okay. Well, if you have any other like major expenses or anything unexpected, we'll certainly provide those updates in a, but those things tend to be, people tend to know about large unexpected expenditures. So we'll be sure everyone's in the loop on anything out of that regular planning process. Okay, great. So we're getting through the agenda ahead of schedule, which is great. I'm going to have to sign off at 7:30. I've got to host a panel here, but we have the 2023 annual review and the COB member retreat. Mummy, I'm happy to brief the preliminary and turn it over to you, but I'm also happy to let you address these items, whichever is more helpful.
Yeah, feel free to go ahead, and just want to point out that annual review, we're talking about the annual report in case that was confusing for anyone, but go ahead and kick it off, and then if there's anything to add, I'll chime in.
Perfect. So for our annual report, which is due in September, we were thinking that the best way to accomplish something a little bit more in depth than what we needed to put together last year, which was just kind of a summary of activities as they took place, is that we would like to identify 2 COB members to work closely with Ian and Memi to sort of go through the report structure format and start organizing some of the information. That shouldn't preclude anyone else from being involved, or an interim review, so that folks can sort of see how we're outlining it and what's going into the report. But this did sneak up on us a little bit, and we've got some significant, I think, elements to sort of digest and make sure that we represent to the public about our investigation process, and some of these other sort of activities we're operationalizing now. And if we try to do that all at the meeting or in a subcommittee meeting, I think we're going to get, we might find ourselves in a scheduling bind. So if we want to, Memi, I'll let you add or clarify anything before we talk about who might be interested in taking the lead on that reporting activity.
Yeah, I think just another thing that I would want to amplify is that I sent out the 2022 annual report that ACPD published couple, like, I think weeks ago. I don't know. Time is just all relative to me at this point, but whenever it was published, I sent it out to make sure that everyone had seen it. So if you haven't reviewed it yet, I would strongly encourage that you go and review that so that it can help to kind of inform your discussions around what sort of things you might want to prioritize in your annual report, where there are opportunities for collaboration, you know, those sort of things, but just kind of having an understanding of, you know, what the priorities were of the police department or different initiatives that they had. That way you're not, you know, recreating work that's already been done, or maybe you might have some additional thoughts about you know, points that were raised or discussions, or maybe, as I said, the report may identify some areas for potential collaboration for next year. Part of your annual report might be a reflection of the work that you've done in the previous year, but also a forecast of things that you might want to do next year. So anyways, just think it might be a good informational document for you all for that purpose, but it's definitely something that you should read either way.
So you sent that email on June 13th, so you're right, it was weeks in, almost a month ago. I just forwarded it back to the group so that it's at the top of y'all's email. And so yeah, part of our thinking was that, you know, 2 folks need to go through our co-develop our inputs, and parceling out from the ACPD report anything we feel we want to address, and some of the issues that we've identified through preliminary investigation processing. So is anyone very interested in helping us start developing that?
Yeah, I'll help with that.
Okay, great. Dave's interested.
What does the report do?
I think it's the end of September. I hope it's not the beginning of September, but
Yeah, end would be a lot better.
I think it's September 30th. Let me double check. What about the rest of the team? Is there anyone interested in helping to compile that? I'm happy to be the second person, but I also don't want to sit in a seat where other folks want to be more engaged and sort of contributory. Is that a word? I don't know.
This is Gary. I have a question on terminology. I'm looking at our report from last year. And I know it was the inaugural year, but it says inaugural law enforcement community oversight board summary of activities. So we're anticipating that our 2023 should not be a summary of activities, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. There was a difference in the language, I think, about our first year report, what it needed to include and address, just recognizing that we had, you know, training and wouldn't have done more of the work. So yes, our report this year will be substantively different than last year's report.
I did also want to make note, I just checked the ordinance, and the written reports due to the county board by September 1st. So it is the beginning of the month rather than the end. But it's only on activities ending on June 30th, so it's respective to the previous fiscal year.
But I guess so you just said activities again. So is this an activity report or a strictly activities?
I mean, I
Because there's a difference.
think you can shape it the way you want to. I don't know, mommy could say,
Yeah.
but I think you can shape it the way that you want to. But it is supposed to report out what we've done or accomplished over the year. I think next year we'll have a lot more to say. Now that we're doing investigations, we're still in a standing up phase, so there's not as much to say.
Okay.
It says activities for the prior fiscal year, along with any comments or recommendations it may choose to make. So I think, like you said,
Yes,
Lisa,
exactly.
we do have liberty in addition to the activities report.
Yeah, we will likely have more recommendations this year than we did last year, both internally and possibly externally. So I'm happy to.
Just terms of reference, I'm looking at yours, Mummy, Office of the IPA and our annual report. Police's annual report, and then ours seems like it's kind of like activities. So, I mean, we can do what we want. I'm just commenting, just terms of reference, we have different reports. Because ours is an activity report.
But I think you could still call it a report.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah.
know that.
I don't want to get into, we don't need to talk about it. I'm just pointing it out that, and ours, I think, was a lot of activities, but I think what we want to do now is kind of, and I know Dave, I know you'll do this, is to kind of step this up a little bit as far as other things that we're going to report on that will be of benefit to the county and to the state. Okay.
Yeah, I think actually, if you think about it in a different lens, the use of the word activities report is that probably the public is more interested, like they're definitely looking for our findings and recommendations, but they probably have a lot more interest in our specific activities as a board because there's 8 of us and the way we coordinate and how we engage with the community is inclusive of IPA activities and, support staff. But if, it's an accounting for, how we're using our time with, which comes with a budget. And so I think we definitely will have space to accommodate, more substantive inputs, but we still want to report on those same things, which is, how much training did we do? When did we do it? What unexpected challenges did we run into? Because that's always going to be, part of what we want the community to be able to understand is, this is new, it's big, it's going to take a lot of time for this to be not new. And so all the mechanics that go into building this and, we'll want to explain why we needed why we wanted to approve a blanket extension for the first complaints and all of that stuff. So, Dave, if it's any consolation, it didn't take that long to sum up the report last year. I know we've got more to do, but I think we can build from that framework and incorporate more elements that we want to communicate from our work this year, which was very different. So,
yeah.
Is anyone else?
I was going to say, I'll obviously need to follow up, with everybody and have some one-on-ones fairly shortly to sort of get this moving, but, happy to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if there isn't anyone else who wants to sort of spearhead that, I'm happy to be the second. And Dave, we probably want to schedule some in-person meetings, both the 2 of us and with me and Ian over the next couple of weeks, just so we can get it framed out and then make sure that we've got enough time to preview to the rest of the group and incorporate their input and feedback. So you're right. It will need to be a very quick mobilization, but I think we have enough basis doing that. So, but I do just want to give one more window in case, and anyone else who, as we get started and move along through this, who wants to participate on specific sections, we'll welcome and be able to accommodate that. But we think that having 2 people designated just makes it feasible that we can have meetings, decompose some of the different elements and make sure that it comes together in a way that accurately reflects to the community what we're trying to do and what we've accomplished so far.
Anika, do you have any?
I was gonna say that I can when you have your first meeting, I can come and if I can, observe what you're doing, because this is a little different for me, so I want to make sure that before I volunteer for something, that I'm like good to go and feel comfortable. So if I am, then I can be a third person.
Great.
Okay. We'll have to daisy chain those meetings, but I'm more than happy to do that so that you can be sort of involved in the initial shaping.
Okay.
Great. I think that's everything we had for the annual report and annual review. Mummy, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Nope. Just, if you all need any support with any sort of like data crunching or formatting or anything like that, or figuring out resources for anything, let us know, and Ian and I are happy to support.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I will definitely be looking for guidance and support. So as soon as I get back next week, I'll put some time on the calendar to come down to the office and get some of it initially framed out. And then Dave, maybe you and I can meet to sort of look at what we're working from and how we want to go about the development. And then Anika, once we've got that sort of preliminary construction done, I'll loop you in.
Do we have an editor? Who's our editor? Oh, okay.
They give you a mirror.
Oh, okay. Just want to make it look, when you see an official
Oh, no, if
report.
you mean that,
Oh,
they don't
layout?
help us with the format.
Oh, okay,
No,
okay,
they'll help
okay.
us. I thought you meant like actually.
Like document production.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. I thought that was in the budget.
No.
I'm hoping that everyone will review and edit it before we circulate it publicly. So I'm hoping that the editor is all of us, but yes, we will have, we'll make sure that it's production value and writing quality reflects the dedication, passion, and qualifications of the group.
Yes.
Hey, Julie, one last question, not just because we're out of time, but just process-wise. So you mentioned the public, and I'm tracking the activity thing and our accountability thing. That makes total, it's perfectly aligned. How does the public get this? Do they get it off the county website? Do they get it off of our website? Just what's the,
Yeah, it would be most likely, well, it would be posted on the COB website. We would probably send it out through the Gov Delivery subscription, so that's about 150 current people, and we'll also present hard copies to the county board as well. But it would be available online, and we would do some sort of communication related to that.
Can we do, for advertising for people, like, to know to go there? Because a lot of regular, ordinary citizens, they're not going to the website. A great way to do it is the QR code. You know how you'll see the bus drive by and there's a QR code? If we can do some advertising when it's published to say, use this QR code, and then it'll take them straight to the website and to the report. But you got to put it in places that people,
what I was going to say is the outreach that we're going to do, it might be handy to take a couple of hard copies. We don't even have to stack 100, but like you said, there's always some people who's like, hey, we'll just go to the website. What website?
Yeah, we'll work with the COGS office over at the county manager's office to figure out a strategy for that. There's newsletters and county.
But all this outreach we're going to do is another opportunity, just some people that haven't seen it go, oh, let me see what they did last year.
Anika, I think that's a really good idea, and I think we can probably print a one-page thing that says, COB's annual report for your community oversight board, annual report now available at the QR code. And maybe we can distribute it to the libraries also, where we're trying to get that connectivity just so that it really permeates out.
And they can have it, and someone could just take the picture of the QR code and it takes them right to the website.
Still got 80-year-old grandma.
Oh, yeah.
That wants the hard copy. There's a few of them.
That's a great idea. Thank you for that input. I hadn't thought about that yet. And I think the Arlington alerts are really valuable for the people who are signed up for them, but we know that's not all of the county. And so making sure that we've got multiple modes of of increasing visibility of our work and access to it, and making sure that we are inviting people into the process as much as possible is very important. So I really appreciate you keeping that line of thinking sort of front of mind and bringing it into the discussion. Thank you, Anika. We always benefit from your other work too. So really, really appreciate it. Anything else on the annual report? We're still ahead of schedule, so no rush. But otherwise, I'm gonna duck out and let Mummy lead the discussion of the COB member retreat. Again, I really apologize for having a conflict this evening, but I'll look forward to seeing you all in person next month, and well, some of you in person next month, unless we do all virtual. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll see if we can't get some individual social coffees on the calendar and stuff too to supplement the member retreat. So anything else before I go? Okay, you have my number. I really appreciate it. Mummy, thank you for leading the discussion on the member retreat. I'll follow up with you, Ian, and Gary tomorrow morning at our debrief.
Sounds
All right.
good. Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
Julie.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So I just to resurface the conversation that we had last year about doing a COB retreat. Not something that we ever calendared because we were trying to figure out training and meeting and various different reasons, operationalizing. But I just wanted to resurface it in case there is any renewed interest in doing it. Ian and I could certainly handle, the administrative and logistic parts of putting one together, but we would love to, first of all, just gauge interest, and then also any sort of ideas about what you all would want it to look like, what you'd like to get out of it, where you think you might want to have it. If anybody has any kind of, you've already been thinking about this for some reason and you have any ideas that come to mind off the top of your head, would love to hear those. If not, I was thinking maybe to just send out like a Google form or like a survey or something that would allow people to tell us, kind of some general scheduling of like some dates that might work for them. If it should be on a weekend, a half day, a whole day. And then, as I said, some of the kind of objectives or goals for what you would want a retreat to look like. Ideally we'd have some sort of, team building activity. We'd have an opportunity to kind of discuss like goals and strategies or visions and that sort of thing for the COB, and obviously, food involved. So, just want to take that into account when thinking about how much time we might want to allot for this. I would definitely say probably at least a half day. But anyways, we could capture all of that information in the survey so that we have everyone's feedback, and then I could circle back to the group with some kind of like summary of what are some of the trends and when it looks like we may have the most availability in terms of scheduling. Does that sound good to you all, or do you all have any thoughts about wanting to resurface that idea?
So you
I
just
think it's
want
a
to
good idea.
right now?
Or at some point.
Sorry, I
I mean-
think Dave and Lisa might have both commented at the same time, so I didn't hear.
Lisa, go ahead.
No, I was just answering Anika. Sorry.
Oh. So, I mean, look, I think generally it's a good idea to meet. I understand that we can't discuss specific COB business, but, I'd be interested to invest time into just doing some activity to further get to know everybody. Food, yes, something local, right? I mean, just I hadn't really thought about where, but I'd be interested to sort of look at what the possibilities are. I think it's a good idea. It's not critical, but I think it's a good idea because we we really don't spend a whole lot of time together.
Yeah, Dave, I'm glad you actually mentioned that because I know when we were first talking about this last year, we were trying to figure out kind of what the parameters were around it. I think that, you know, a purely social event is, you know, one thing, but I think if we wanted to have the space to discuss, you know, vision, mission, any sort of COB goals or objectives, this would probably be something that we'd want to publicly notice just to make sure that we are fulfilling the meeting guidelines. In which case you all could, you know, however many people are going to attend, everyone could attend and we could discuss, you know, whatever related to COB visits, as long as it's publicly noticed. So that may give much more flexibility and also then make sure that we are operating within the confines of our public meeting requirements. There was another thing that I was going to say that completely escaped me. It'll come back to me, hopefully. Oh, I remember. Keeping in mind that investigations are about to ramp up. So, you know, I understand that this is not a top priority, and certainly when you guys, you know, jump into these investigations, you might find that your capacity is even more stretched. So my feelings will not be hurt if you all think this is something you want to pass off till later or next year or what have you. I just wanted to make sure to resurface it if it is something, because I know, you know, while last year we were in the, you know, we were doing fast-paced training, we had an opportunity to see each other a lot more. And now that we don't have that, I want to just make sure that we're able to keep that momentum going and build those relationships by spending time together in person that we may not have this. We were literally doing like double the amount of meetings last year. So that was kind of the impetus behind wanting to maybe resurface that idea. Either way, I'm happy to send out a survey for y'all's feedback, but if you all find that you are going to probably be inundated with all of the other stuff that we need to do, operationalizing and getting fully off the ground and jumping into these investigations, that's perfectly understandable as well. I just wanted to make sure that I articulated that so you take that into consideration when you're thinking about your capacity. And then I wanted to circle back to the investigations piece when we go into the open discussion in the next portion of the agenda.
Yeah, Mommy, you hit the nail on the head because we were talking about the framework, the rules. So I think on that doodle poll, I think we have to all put our bids in, or do we want this just to be a team building fun thing, something like bowling and some food, chatting, or getting to know each other, which is totally different. And or if we really feel like we need to plan together. So I think that has to be on that doodle poll. I don't have the answers. And then the other portion is maybe in that doodle poll, because each of us have different things going on. So maybe you could put on there things like, you know, early morning, Saturday morning, we meet for coffee. You know, is that the best? People that have kids, you know, things they have to do on the weekends. Is it better early? Is it better late? Is it better Saturday, Sunday? Holiday, is a Monday, is a holiday better? So maybe we can get a good sense of all of our parameters. And I think from that, we can probably figure something out.
Yeah, definitely happy to work out any sort of accommodations that will make it easier for people. We could even consider doing a family-friendly event, selfish plug, so that, you know, folks who may have kids in their care might be able to, you know, have more availability on weekends and stuff like that, or evenings. If there isn't anything else pressing about that, I'm going to just move us right along to open discussion as our last agenda item, and hopefully we'll wrap up early because we're already an hour ahead of schedule. So open discussion. I wanted to make sure to just close out the conversation about the investigations. So I was specifically speaking about section 69.9C1 as it pertains to myself and ACPD's 60-day timeline. And just to circle back, as I said, there's another 60-day timeline reference in C9 that refers to the COB. So just wanted to make sure that I finished that thought, which is going back and referencing that part of the ordinance, once you all receive the investigation, including OPR's report and my report, that's when your 60-day clock starts. So you all also have 60 days to complete your investigation and produce your report. And if you are nearing the 60-day timeline, or you're going to go over the 60-day timeline, what you would need to do is submit a request, or basically to do the same type of written request approval, but instead it would go to the Chief Penn, as well as the county manager. So you would just want to make sure that you have that in mind, and maybe some way to internally kind of keep track of your times. If you all need support with coming up with some sort of like spreadsheet or anything like that to keep track of that, or help coming up with a template to use for your request for an extension of time if you ever need it. Ian and I can definitely support you all with that, but I just wanted to make sure that I articulated why there's a distinction between the two timelines. So one is on the front end, and then the other one is on the back end when you all receive the investigation. So then segueing into what we were talking about in terms of jumping into investigations, I wanted to just kind of make sure that I open the floor in case there were any questions or any discussions or any ideas about how you all are going to handle investigations during your meetings. So we had a closed session with outside counsel to discuss specifically instances where you can or cannot go into closed session. But aside from that, like administratively is what I'm referring to. We talked about having the 2 COB members that are assigned to that particular investigation coming up with a discussion guide to kind of guide the conversation and highlight the issues in a particular investigation. This is just a recap. And then to also outline some of the things that you all may want to vote on. I would recommend that you all kind of formalize some sort of protocol or policy around how you're going to handle like voting on certain issues. Are you going to vote by allegation? Are you going to vote in favor of, whatever the report is? Are the 2 members assigned to the investigation going to be the ones who like make the determination about whether you all find that the allegations should have been sustained or not sustained, or whatever the category is, and then the COB would concur or dissent? Or is it that you all are going to individually vote on each particular allegation? Just some of the kind of like nuances with that. And then kind of, are you all going to handle these discussions during your regular meeting time? Or are you going to have a second meeting that discusses just investigations, like kind of similar to how the county board may have like 2 separate meetings, one for regular agenda, one for consent agenda? Like, are you going to do one that's an administrative COB meeting and then one that is a investigation specific meeting? Just throwing some ideas out there, not necessarily pointing in one specific direction or another, but just kind of highlighting some of the things that you all may want to kind of talk through amongst yourselves and kind of formalize. Or we could open the floor for it now, or if you want to think about it a little bit. But I just wanted to make sure that I brought that back up, because as I stated, we started doing the interviews yesterday. So we are expecting that some of these are going to start coming down the pipeline to you all in the very near future, and just want to make sure that you all are prepared with a procedure and everybody's clear about how you're going to handle processing those investigations.
I have some thoughts, but I want to listen first. Anybody else's feelings?
I haven't started on this yet, so I don't have an opinion.
Does anybody have any? Because this is following up from our last training we had.
Right. We kind of just set the framework for how
Yep.
we were going to like debrief, and then what would come out of the debrief. So that kind of like sets the stage for the meeting. But I think what I'm trying to develop here is how to kind of finalize that process, or the thought process around what the protocol is going to be, and then how to formalize it. And if there are any already existing thoughts about how you all are planning to handle those, or what you want those to look like, or if there are areas where I can help to provide guidance, then, happy to identify those and help with formalizing a protocol. But I just want to make sure that you all don't get, a heap of investigations in like the next couple of weeks, and then we don't have a plan of action for how you might want to go about addressing those at your next meeting, if it's the next one or if it's the September one.
Okay, so I'll speak for myself. I'm not sure. I mean, you gave us some great examples there and some different pros and cons, but just from what you shared and what we talked about last time, the presentation, and now, hey, we do need to do that. I mean, we need to at least have this, take the framework that you presented. And I don't know if what the right method is, but I'm thinking, like, I don't want a training session, but I almost think we need to take like a straw man, just a notional made up thing, and just walk through it with the things you just said. You can do this or that, and we can kind of walk through. And I think doing that in a practical manner with something that I'm holding on to, I think I can choose whether I want to go left or right. But right now, I can't answer. I wish I could answer the question right now, but I can't. I remember the training, and I don't have enough of an opinion now to say anything. And I'm not proposing a training, but I think we need to have something else before. But I do agree with you, Mommy. We need to have a plan. You can't without a plan.
Well, we could definitely do a mock. We could also, I could share with you all videos of how, like Charlottesville, for example, has handled hearings, just keeping in mind that, each jurisdiction has some kind of like different protocols or different authorities and that sort of thing, but it may just kind of give you an idea of how, the closed session issue is handled, and what kind of information you all can publicly share, and what type of information you would have to refrain from, like personal identifiable information and different things like that. But definitely we could do a mock one. Another thing that I would say might be a good reference is, gosh, now I don't even know how many months back this was, but I sent out a investigation report kind of template that just covers kind of what the ordinance requires your investigative reports to kind of consist of. And of course, you all can cater that or adjust the template to whatever your needs are, but that might give you an idea of kind of what the topics are that you would need to address in your investigative report, that may then lend itself to you being able to kind of conceptualize what type of discussions you would need to have during your meetings in order for the report to for you to be able to produce a report and cover those topics. So another thing I would say is, like, just to kind of give the examples that I gave in a more like practical context, right? So you have an investigation and there are two people that are assigned to it. Those are the people that would have been briefed on the investigation at the onset and then at the closing. So those are the two people that would have like the most in-depth information about the investigation, and then they would facilitate the COB through a discussion at the meeting. Let's say in this particular investigation, there are, two allegations, and you all may want to, have discussion around them. And then as a COB, you vote in favor of, what finding you should have had on a particular investigation. That could be like a little bit more complicated, and you may have to like vote on each particular finding, if that makes sense. But you could do that for each allegation. And the pro to that would be that you have the opportunity for, I guess, like more individual input, or just a more, and also like maybe a more like transparent process in that regard, of being able to like, express why you are, leaning one way or another on a particular allegation. But again, that may be more complicated. But there are pros. So I would say the complication is probably a con, but the pro is that you would be able to gauge like individual input on each allegation. Separately, if you had similar to, and this is probably not the best time to use this example, but similar to the Supreme Court, you have like justices who write an opinion, right? And typically those are the people who are, kind of like, if you will, like the lead on a particular case. And they may be the people that have like they're the lead on like the research or just kind of the areas of law that the particular case brings up. So they're, as you, for this example, let's say like the assigned experts on this particular case. They write the opinion and then the other justices vote. And then if there is a particular, point that a person wants to bring out, they may write a concurring opinion, just, re-emphasizing why they concurred in the lead justice's opinion. Or on the other side, if they're dissenting, they might want to particularly draw out a point why they voted against whatever the ruling was in that case. So now drawing the example to here, you would have the two COB members that are assigned to an investigation essentially make findings on behalf of the COB, and then you could possibly have a group vote either in favor of those or not in favor of whatever the findings are. Or it would be an individual vote, but it would be on the two members' findings on behalf of the COB, if that makes sense. So that just wanted to kind of, maybe like, and that was probably not the most like efficient explanation, but just wanted to kind of talk through the thought process of what I mean by having like individual input per allegation per case versus having like 2 point people kind of be responsible for issuing findings for each investigation, and then having the rest of the COB have a vote to in favor or as opposed to whatever the findings are that those two people make.
I kind of like that proposal. I mean, like Gary, we haven't done this before, so I think we're going to go through a few iterations before we feel comfortable with what the process ought to be. And I think we ought to be prepared to be flexible because we might change it. I mean, we might, once we get some examples under our belt, feel like, we're not doing it in the most efficient or the most fulsome way. But to start, I kind of like having the two people who have gotten the most debriefing doing a proposed opinion, if you will. But we'll see how that plays out. Mommy, you sent in an email the information you referred to earlier about the sort of sample report. Is that just going to be pending in an earlier email, or is that actually somewhere else where I can go back and look for it?
It's in an earlier email, but we can bump it up so you guys can easily find it.
Okay, actually, that would be helpful if you do that again.
I just can't even remember how long. I know it was a while ago that I sent it, but I can't remember exactly what month off the top of my head. But yeah, we'll bump it up to your email so it's clear. And it's also on the COB channel, in your folders on your Teams channel. But I'll in the email, I'll make sure you guys know where to look in those folders in case you haven't been able to find it.
Honestly, the Teams channel, I haven't found that yet. I confess, like, I'm not sure where it is.
It's not very user friendly, but we're happy to do another walkthrough.
Definitely have to access that stuff. I feel stupid saying that. I don't know if I'm the only one, but
Dave, I'll reach out to you. You as well, Martine?
Yeah, I know the Teams.
Okay, yeah, then Dave, I'll reach out to you. I'll send you.
All right, thanks.
What do you think?
I mean, without opening the document, you could just share your screen too and just show like how to navigate it if you'd like to, if we have time.
I could do that, but I just don't know if Dave has access to Teams to be able to navigate yet.
I should be able to. I mean, I've looked at all the allegations that have come in via email, right? I mean, I've read them all, you know what I mean? But the Teams channel stuff, I haven't I don't know. I'll just follow up with you, Ian, and we'll figure it out.
Okay. Mommy, did you still want me to share my screen?
No, that's fine. We want to do it individually. That way you can walk people through and make sure that they are able to access it in real time.
Hey, Mommy, I was gonna hear from a couple other people here, going back to this. So Dave, I appreciate your input. I kind of feel the same way as that, but just for starters, what do you guys feel like?
I was gonna say the same thing. I do like the Supreme Court approach for cases that seem like they need more attention, but I wouldn't do that on every. That's a lot of work, but I do like the fact of having the leads sort of, winnow it down, present the information, and of course, you all can ask extra questions, right? So as the person presents it, and then we'll answer those questions, and then we'll tell you what our recommendation is, and then we take a vote. I mean, I think that is the most efficient way to do them, because there's going to be plenty, and we want to be able to get through them. But I do think there may be situations where we're going to want to do something more expansive, depending.
Yeah, Lisa, I think that approach of maybe differentiating might make sense. Although I kind of am leaning towards the opposite, in that if there is a case that is more complicated or just like a more high profile one, that might be one where you might want to have more individual input and discussion around it. So just some food for thought there. And then
But wouldn't somebody have to, wouldn't somebody still have to sort of, so are you suggesting then that all of us, for a more high profile one, would have to be the leads, right? Like
you would still have the leads, but what I'm talking about is just like how to issue the findings. The only issue with making the distinction, which I totally understand the logic behind it, I think it's a good idea. The only issue with making that distinction is then you're going to have to articulate what cases fall under that category. You're going to need to figure out how you
an agreement. I mean, as you present it and you discuss it, people might say, this one seems a little complex. Maybe we want to. Maybe this needs more of a conversation. Or somebody, as you said, might feel really strongly that the group has gone one way. It's like, I really feel strongly, and I'd like to be able to make some kind of written explanation that goes into the record as to why I feel strongly. So.
I think that could happen in either circumstance. Like you could always, create a space for someone to write a, let's say, concurring or dissenting opinion. What I'm narrowing in on, because I think both situations we should always have space for there to be discussion amongst the members when we're talking about investigation, and for members to be able to make their particular points clear about what their views are on a particular investigation. But what I'm talking about is just like how you issue the findings. So after the discussion is had, and when it comes time to issuing the findings, are the two members who are responsible for that investigation going to be the ones that issue the findings, and then the COB kind of like votes to, in favor of it or not in favor of it? And then, what happens when we don't all vote in favor of a particular outcome or finding? That's like a whole other discussion too. But Dave's like, yeah. But so to distinguish, there's the scenario where you have the group discussion, and then you have the two members, issue findings, present them to the group, and then you all vote in favor or not in favor. And then if anybody does have a strong opinion that they want to put in writing, I think you could still carve out an opportunity for that person to include that in the report. And then the other option would be, you all have the same group discussion, and then you go allegation by allegation and vote, take the vote on which finding. And then you'd go through literally, is it a not sustained? Is it sustained? Is it, exonerated? Is it whatever the category is?
Anybody else have any thoughts?
I like the idea of doing a mock, instance of, going through the debrief and everything. Makes a lot of sense.
Do you like this model of having two people as a lead? each time.
That makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think the thing that will really energize that is us sharing lead. Like, I think it would not be good for us to have the same two people, or at least one of these same people. I mean, and it's certainly not gonna order people to be the lead, but as much as we can for each of us to, at some point, have the chance to, lead that discussion, I think will be good for us.
So how would we figure out like the rotation?
It should be random. Should
Yeah,
not?
that makes sense.
I mean, I think that there should be random. So we're also talking about pairing. That pairing should be random. So that we
Should
get
be
to work with
random.
each other on different cases.
Yeah, I don't think it's
So
scheduled.
the pairings are assigned on the Excel spreadsheet. So Julie is one staple person that would be on every investigation as the chair, just to, ensure like consistency in formatting and report drafting or what have you. But I would propose that maybe like Julie's not the lead, the other person is the lead, because that's the person that's going to rotate. So Julie is just there to like maintain, the formatting, the consistency, the structure. What we do for investigations, when you open the Excel spreadsheet, you'll see that they are assigned in alphabetical order by last name. So it's random, but there's a method behind it. And it's based on the date that we received the complaint. So we go in order of when we received the complaint and then just assign it to the next person in line. What
But
that would do.
Sorry. But is the
No.
idea of having Julie on all of them like a permanent idea? Because, well, first of
It
all,
is
that's
not.
a lot of work for one person. And so is it a permanent idea or what is your thinking?
It is not. We kind of came up with that structure at the initial onset, but I
That
don't
makes
think
sense.
that
Okay.
it's
You
not
want
a
one person
long-term
that's
solution, because
Okay.
you don't want
makes
one
sense.
person to like be responsible for all of that
Yeah.
work, but it'll just help us to get it on the ground and running. And then if we wanted to transition to doing two members,
Got it.
two
Okay.
separate
That makes
members, and we could do it, the same kind of
Yeah.
way. One thing I would say is that having one lead on each case, and then Julie as the kind of like secondary or supplemental support person would make it easier for there to be just like, if you're going to have this one person issue a finding on behalf of the COB versus like two people then who are assigned to the investigation having to come up with a joint finding. But it's definitely possible as well. So we could randomize the two people in the same way that we've randomized the one person who's assigned with Julie to each investigation. But the underlying purpose here in just rotating is just to make sure that we give each COB member a voice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think Julie talked about, she's primary and I would be the alternate.
For the initial.
For that initial
batches
couple of
until-
months until we get our,
It's too much for one person to always be on
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
And it doesn't give us the opportunity to work as together as peers.
Yep.
So at some point.
That'd be the goal, is that Julie eventually weans
Right,
off.
yeah.
We're all getting our sea legs on.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds like we are kind of in favor of at least starting out with piloting the two-member approach to the issuing like findings officially on behalf of the COB. I think this probably still needs some more conversation to kind of iron out, but with this foundation from the group, I would propose that then we could iron out the rest of the details with Julie and Gary as the leadership team, and then kind of formalize the protocol with those kind of additional things figured out, which is like things like, what happens if you all don't vote, if there isn't a majority vote to, on a particular allegation, or just, different things like that. So just making sure that we have some plan of action for those type of scenarios. Does that make sense to y'all?
Yeah.
Okay. If we have a lot of head nods, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Gary. That's it for me on that piece. I would open the floor to anyone else who has anything else that they want to bring up for open discussion. And if there isn't anything, then we can proceed forward, or Gary, you can proceed forward with adjourning the meeting whenever it's appropriate.
I would say with the thing that's being prepared to straw man for this process, if along with that there could be a timeline of what we would like to be accomplished with how this pairs out over the 60 days. Your 60 days, start to finish, but more importantly, our 60 days, when our 60 days starts, and what key things that leadership team, you and Julie and Mooney decide, okay, within these 60 days, really it's 50, so that we can make sure we make 60 all the time. And then within that 50, okay, by day 10, you should have, you and your team should have done this. By day 20, you should have
So
done
you're
this.
talking like a Gantt chart.
Then the meeting, right, and then there's the meeting. And then also, separate from that, then I think it would be helpful, and this is really just a, Julie, Mooney thing for now, but definitely, weighing in as we'll discuss this timeline. What realistically does a meeting look like when we're gonna have, I imagine at some point, 3 or 4 or 5 of these discussed. And right now, just amongst us chickens, we talked about nothing controversial. And this was scheduled for till 9 o'clock, and right now it's 8 o'clock. So, and we're only at half our complement. So easily, we know this group can push it. So what does that really look like to talk about this? Because even if we come prepared, fully read, still, we want to talk. So what does it look like?
That's a very good.
I mean, there are ways.
Excellent points.
This time, like you could have.
Just a second, one.
Like if you're going to share your proposal ahead of time with people prior to the meeting, you could also have a Google table where people are like, I would have these questions, like I've read it so that you know ahead of time.
Right.
And it makes it much faster. And there might be some things that can be ticked off kind of quickly. Because if it's the first I hear that you've got X question, I may know the answer, but it's like somewhere in.
Right, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right.
So, I mean, that's another way of doing it. But that means we all had to have read them ahead of time, which you would have to have done anyway, right? Like, there's no way you could come here without having. So, I mean, that's my only suggestion, is you could have for each case, you could also have sort of, each member could go in and say, I have an outstanding question, blah, blah, blah. You wouldn't be discussing it virtually, because we can't do that, but at least that everybody would see what the questions were ahead of time.
So like that's the type of thing that would be contemplated in this. This is what this 60 days on our end would look like.
Mommy, are you following this conversation? Are you tracking what Charles brought up?
All makes sense. I love the timeline idea. And then the second point that he's making about like the timing of how much time we're going to spend talking about these, that circles back to the question that I asked about, like, are we going to have a separate meeting for these and that sort of thing. I also really like Lisa's idea of everyone kind of coming, having already read and prepared to vote, unless there are issues that you want to discuss. And
that
possibly
means
like the discussion guide, for example, could be like publicly posted.
I think this is probably you and Ian sitting down and figure out what tool will help us be efficient and effective. So whether it's the Google template
Were you suggesting, so Mommy, what I was suggesting was, in addition to obviously all of us having read everybody's write-up before we come to vote, that we could have somewhere, and my question is, would this have to be public? I guess it doesn't matter either way. A Google chart or table where members, as they read other members' reports, would list out their existing questions ahead of the meeting. So that I would know before I present that Gary wants to know about something that, blah, blah. Yeah. And then so would that have to be public? It doesn't really matter if it's public.
So I think you have two separate documents that can accomplish this purpose. You have the investigative report, which you all, can, it can be like a document that you all can, similar to, let's say when I send out the MOU, right? Like you can all open it, you can add comments or questions and that sort of thing. And as long as there's not like a simultaneous group chat going on, then that's perfectly legal for you all to do. And that does not have to be a, public document until obviously you're going to publish it at some point when you have, concluded the report. Separately, there's the discussion guide, which you all are going to actually actively use during your meeting. And I think that is definitely the document that you want to publish prior to the meeting so the public can see, here's what the discussion is going to be. So like, think of the investigative report and your comments there as kind of like the plenary thing, right? So then your two people who are doing the investigations know, okay, there are issues and questions around these topics. And then you figure out, okay, are some of these issues, have they already been disposed of by information that was gleaned in the investigation at some point? Or are there issues of like, a substantive debate about a particular analysis or something like that? Then those sort of things that are going to be discussed at the meeting would be what gets put on the discussion guide. And that should be a public document so folks are aware going into the meeting what some of the topics are that are going to be discussed regarding a particular investigation, or could be. It's not required, but if there's going to be a public document, I think it should be just like a kind of outline of what issues are going to be discussed or what investigations are going to be discussed.
Right, what investigations, that certainly makes sense. And it
Yeah.
also makes sense that we don't need a separate document to put the questions in, because it is a Google Doc already. What we've written up, and you can just tag it like you do in any Google Doc and say, I'm wondering about X.
Yeah. You all can do group edits on any document. It just cannot be a simultaneous,
Yeah.
it can be a simultaneous.
Can't be back and forth. I can't answer you, Charles, if you have a question.
Right.
I might be there and like, where's the answer? Right, 'cause that's a meeting.
Right.
I get it.
I
Yeah.
mean, you could answer if somebody left a comment in a document, you can answer the comment in the document.
Oh,
It
yeah,
just
yeah.
can't be like everyone's logged in at the same time and we're all chatting back and forth. That cannot.
No, I get it. This will all be clearer to me once I start.
Yeah, once
I
we,
mean, it's really hard to know what our questions are, how this will work. I think it'll just.
We can definitely, create some like written guidelines around that so that folks don't have to rely on their memories to know what they can and cannot do and are aware of what their protocols are. And I
Yes.
can also have
Now, I
Cynthia
mean,
and
it's
the
not
outside
too
counsel
much.
just review it too.
We're
Or
not
if
pushing
you-
our luck by asking them to. Yes, please.
keep it nice and simple.
Yes.
Thou shalt.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Number one, open the document. So it's like, we need it.
Do this,
Well, that's-
Sort of.
do good, don't be wrong.
Yeah.
And it's just a follow-up question on the report. So the report, your report, Mummy, will be redacted, or will you use like witness 1, witness 2? I mean, that's the part that I still want to get. I'm sure we all want to get a better handle on. Like, we can refer to date and time and location, actual date and location, which in and of itself will identify for some people what's going on. I mean, this whole thing is fraught in my mind, but then when we get individual people, we say witness 1 or person A or person B. That's what I'm trying to get a handle on, and we won't really know until we've gone through it. But will your report, Mummy, be constructed in that way? Because if it's public, it has to be, right? Am I correct about that?
Mine will not have the names of any particular individuals. It will say Officer 1, Officer 2, Witness A, Witness B, which will also, I think, make it just easier to make sure that you all don't run into any sort of issues with publicizing information.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's why that simple rule book will be good. I mean, we may make a mistake here or there, but that would be good for us to have at least something that we, before the first one we do. Mummy, do you have anything, you want to see if there's any other, did you have anything else for the open portion?
I did.
Okay.
2 things actually. Assuming there's no other comments about the investigative process or anything. I already talked to Lisa about this, so it's okay that she stepped out. But Molly and I wanted to gauge sort of our intent here is to, and Mummy, please jump in if I'm wrong, order 2 sort of COB logo branded polo shirts for everybody. There's 2 colors, one I guess beige, one white, and if there's a women's down there, and then I'm holding the men's here, so it's a size chart. You would just write your name and then the size based upon the sizing guidelines, charts, and images that are included. That would be super helpful for us as we kind of plan out, branding purchases for any community engagement events and that sort of thing. So it's handy booklets that.
Yeah, and I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll leave those on the table for us to kind of maybe quickly do it.
Julie,
I
Yes.
filled it out.
Yeah, I'm just telling the full
Did you
group.
take it, or did I leave it, or what did I do with
I think
it?
you can have.
Oh, this is, okay.
Yeah,
I just want to
so-
be sure he gets it.
Yeah, I'll make sure everyone.
Please make sure to put your sizing information on there before you leave, and then Dave will reach out to you and Julie separately to get your sizing information.
Funny, on the way over here, I was wondering if somebody was thinking about that, here you are with it. But no, this would be good to do on our ride-alongs and out there with the community and stuff. I think this is a good idea. So.
On the ride, oh, no, actually, you're right, on the ride along. I always felt like awkward.
I did
I
too.
felt so awkward. It's like I'm trying to blend into the wall. Because they're like, who are you?
That's
Why are you
exactly
here?
it.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm with him.
I'm like,
Yeah, don't rock me, I'm with him.
no, it's just, that I always felt awkward.
No, this is really good.
Because it feels so voyeuristic in people's most vulnerable moment. Why am I here? It's, so having this, I actually think is a great idea.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and the second thing
And
that
I'll send out you a visual proof to you all about what they're going to look like as well before I officially order them.
And they
Okay.
both are short sleeve.
both are short sleeve, that's right. Then maybe we could do
Are you gonna
the long sleeve version.
Send this to the people who aren't here to Dave, or?
Yeah, we'll send it
they
off to
said they
Dave.
would send it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And when do you want these back?
If you could just fill it out right now, that we just, the sizing information at least, and then we can send out the design.
Okay.
Like, well, what it would look like with the logo on it and everything, and then maybe if there's changes, that as well.
Okay.
The second,
Go ahead.
the second thing was that we reached out to the folks over at the sheriff's office, specifically to organize a date and time for the COB as a whole, or at least as many people as available to do a tour of the detention facility.
Oh, yeah.
And that date would be Tuesday, August 22nd, from 10:30 to 12. And I'll send that out as a calendar invitation as well to everybody's county emails. But if we could just gauge sort of availability and interest for that date and time. Again, that's the 22nd of August from 10:30 to 12. That would just be helpful as we try and plan this. But the sheriff's been kind enough to block out an hour and a half for all of us that Tuesday. So Mummy and I have toured the detention facility before. It was very informative, very insightful. And everyone there from the sheriff's office is very welcoming and engaging with us as well. So this would be a great opportunity to kind of get a sense for, any goings-ons at the detention facility, but also to, engage with the sheriff's office and that team there.
Apologize, I was writing date and time.
It's Tuesday, August 22nd from 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m.
What do they do with juveniles?
That's not mandatory,
They
right?
have
Mhm.
them? I'm curious to know.
I actually don't believe so, but
I'm just curious to
Oh,
know
Mummy
how
was
they
gone.
have juveniles.
yeah, I actually don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, well, we don't have to talk about it now. I'm just curious.
Okay, so, and if you can't make that, just provide Ian maybe some alternate dates.
Well, I think they've already scheduled.
Yeah, but
We've
we
already-
scheduled that specific date,
But
but
if they can't make it, maybe they can do something later.
if it doesn't work out for anybody, we'll,
Yeah, schedule something.
And I'll send that out as an outlook.
To the midnight man.
Yeah. That was all.
See them all.
Any other open discussion from the? Okay, Mommy, anything else? David? Dave?
Nope, nothing for me.
Okay,
I'm all good.
okay. Since there's no other open discussion, I make a motion to adjourn. Does anybody like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Yeah, you have
They don't
to.
have to.
You don't have to since we stick.
No.
Oh,
Say go
my
home.
chance to, okay, I'll just be grandeur. The meeting is adjourned. Go home.
Excellent.
Yeah, you
Mummy,
just
thank
wave your
you.
wand.
David, thanks for joining.
All right, thanks, everybody.
We all
Thank
have
you, guys.
bosses.
Thank you.
Goodbye, Sergeant, or good Captain Tim, goodbye.
As I said, Lieutenant General, or
Deputy Chief.
Deputy,
whatever she is.
goodbye, everybody.
She's been promoted, like, deputy
Deputy
chief.
Deputy Chief,
Thank you.
Captain Tim.
She'll always be lieutenant